Hello everyone, my name is Litovkina, and today I'm going to record an interview with William Benkő. William, could you tell us a few words about yourself?
Happily. Good morning. I'm William Benkő. I'm a business guy. I'm a business person who likes to help take small things and turn them into bigger things. But while I'm building businesses, I never pass up an opportunity to help somebody build themselves. My passion is speaking. And I help people in the area of public speaking, people who have something to say, but have a difficult time saying it. And over the years, it has helped me to boost my self-confidence by helping other people boost their self-confidence. This is a business skill and a teaching skill and a life skill. So being able to speak well is not something that you only need in business. You need it everywhere, regardless what your business is, whether you teach for a living or you run some kind of a company. It's my passion.
Fantastic. It is also my passion. I use my speech a lot since I teach at university, and I'm also a psychologist and a coach. I deliver workshops, so I need business skills, such skills for myself. And this is why I have decided to talk to you today. Could you tell us about your childhood? As I have read on the website of your Speak Academy, that you were brought up in US.
That's correct. My parents left Hungary in 1956, and I and my brother and sister were all born in the United States. We grew up there in what I would call a normal family, but I wouldn't call an extraordinary family. So my parents took risk when they left one country and went to another, but they were not necessarily the entrepreneur type that wanted to make a risk or taking risks a regular part of their lifestyle or mindset. And so we grew up in a safe environment. But growing up in the United States is it's not very healthy to be in a safe environment. It's a country about change. It's a country about experimenting. It's a country about creating businesses out of new ideas. And you have to have a lot of courage to be able to do that. And if you're not taught to experiment and fail, and we were not taught to experiment and fail, then you're not going to have the important skill set that will allow you to take that first step if you have an idea and try to make it, turn into the dream that you perhaps associated with it. And I realized that that's not the only area where I'm lacking skill-wise. I was shy. I didn't feel comfortable in getting up in front of other people. And I was in high school when a friend of mine signed me up to give a speech in front of the student body. And for us, the student body was 800 people. And so I'd never given a speech in front of anybody. I mean, other than maybe as a kid, getting up in front of a class, but there's a whole difference, a world of difference between speaking in front of 20 people and speaking in front of 800 people. And I underestimated how difficult that might be. But I didn't pull my name out of the hat. I said, what could be so difficult? And so I memorized my speech. It was about 1 page long. And then when I was called, my name was called as the last speaker, I froze. But those feelings that I experienced then were horrible. I was embarrassed. I was scared. I couldn't move. Couldn't pull the piece of paper out of my pocket to read my speech. And I was quiet for a long time. Now, we teach people to have a pause, a longer pause in any time they're speaking, but this was not a pause. This was 2 minutes of silence. And I was so embarrassed that I didn't even go to school the next day. And I knew from all the positive examples that I had grown up with, there were a lot of people that I saw, whether they were basketball coaches or football players or pastors or maybe on a limited basis, but politicians. There are a lot of good examples in the United States of people who speak well. And so the input was there. And I felt like I still wanted to possess that skill. Now I'm going to have to work really hard to figure out how to get it. Because I'm going to have to, there are only two ways to respond to this. Either avoid this situation and never get up in front of people again. That's one. Very effective, not very useful. Or the other is to figure out a way to how you can overcome this fear. And there's no, I've never met anybody who can magically snap their fingers and from Tuesday to Wednesday become a great public speaker. It takes time, it takes mistakes, you know this. You have to get up, you need to face your fear, you need to do it. You'll experience growth, then you'll make a mistake, then you'll be embarrassed again, but you just keep doing it and doing it and doing it. And ultimately you will have the confidence. Yeah. And so that's how I made the decision to work with this.
When you talk about fear, I remember about 10 years ago, I was invited to have some classes, to have some lectures in Krakow. And I was asked to teach lectures for 250 people. And I had never had lectures before that for 250 people. Maximum size of my groups were maybe like 40 students. And imagine, for 40 students, I never used microphone. And there I remember that I was just trembling. So it was terrible, the very first day. Terrible. I was afraid that that my students would start throwing some eggs at me or tomatoes or whatever else. And I remember what happened with me a few months later. So a few months later, I was enjoying it so much. So I had hundreds of people in front of me, hundreds of students, and it was just a fantastic feeling. And what was fantastic was that, you know, when at first you get out of your comfort zone, at first it seems so frightening. You just like really freeze to death, and afterwards you overcome it. Why is it so hard? Why is it so frightening for so many people to speak in public? And when we use the word public speaking, we know that public speaking is not only for 800 people, or as it was in your case, but sometimes for some people it might be even frightening to speak in front of 3 people or 4 people. If we think about job interviews, for example.
I can only reflect on my experience. So if you grow up in an environment where you are not encouraged to fail, but you may actually be punished for failing, then you start to fear or hate that feeling of not doing well and then getting punished for it. So even though we talk about how to raise kids and parenting, but often parents don't do that. They don't sit down and say, you know, I'm glad you made that mistake. Now let's talk about the consequences and how you can improve. Some parents do, but when I was growing up as a child, that was not the typical way to raise your kids. And people start to avoid things that embarrasses them, makes them feel bad. Most kids don't grow up in democratic households. So if a child shares their opinion, they're not taught how to share their opinion. And most parents don't want to be reminded by someone who's half or a third their size that they have not done a good job of parenting. It's a natural reaction. We start to avoid things that make us feel bad. And some people take it to the extreme and are so afraid to share their opinion and have such a low opinion of any idea that comes into their mind. I had a program that worked with inmates many of my students would go back and work with people who were going to be released from jail in the next 12 months. And one of the areas that almost everybody was affected in was that they were never allowed to share their thoughts. And they were not encouraged to share their thoughts. And so these people looked in many cases for a way to turn up the volume to make sure that ultimately they would get some level of attention. And I just, we need to think about what it was like when we were kids, and then encourage the kids, come on, tell me now. I want to hear it. And then not punish them for being honest and sharing what they feel.
I have spent quite a lot of time in US, so I have got a number of scholarships there, and I have traveled a lot. My daughter went to school in US, so she spent 1 year there, and my experience in US and my experience with students and teachers in US is that Americans have much better skills of public speaking, and also that they have much higher self-confidence. For example, I remember years ago, it was really maybe 30 years ago, when I just started my career in teaching. One American teacher said that if an American student says 10 words in any language, he says that I speak this language. But if a Hungarian student, for example, has been studying English or French or any other language for many, many years, he or she will say that, my skills are very, very poor. Could you talk about the difference in public speaking skills and the difference in self-confidence in US and in Hungary?
The US is a very competitive environment in all areas. So if you look at sports, you see sports at the school level, high school level, college level, professional level. People in the United States take, for example, college basketball very seriously. I don't know of a single university in Hungary that has a college basketball team. And that level of competition in every area helps to, I think sports, just like speaking, are a great way to develop the skills that you can transfer to other parts of life. So playing a sport means that you're going to have to learn to lose, and you're going to have to learn to win. And regardless of whether you won or lost, you have to play again next Saturday. And being part of a team means that I'm not calling it taking an oath where you put your hand on a Bible, but you make a commitment that you will play, and then you are expected to live up to your word and play, regardless of what happened last time. And you learn that emotional maturity, that even if you lost the Sunday football game in front of 80,000 people, you have to be the best you can be next Sunday in front of 90,000 people. And anytime people are under pressure, they figure out how to, they understand themselves better, and they got to figure out how to handle emotions. Now, when we were kids in school, we would have a Friday morning class called Show and Tell, where we would take in our favorite stuffed animal or our truck or our doll. And our responsibility was to get up in front of the class and talk about it for a minute. Not 20 minutes, a minute. And we could say anything. We could say why we liked it. It could be the color. It could be that my mom used to have this as her favorite toy and now I have it. Whatever the reason was. And the kids could not tease you or laugh at you. They clapped. They clapped when you stood up, and they clapped when you sat down. And so the school desensitizes children, not everybody, but a lot of children. So you can see, if you look at the averages, I would agree that the average American student has more confidence and has greater ability to communicate in public because they have more opportunities to do it. They're encouraged to do it and they're asked to do it. And this is so important in taking your idea and turning it into a business. I mean, Silicon Valley is where it's at, not by accident. What would be more interesting or more of a mystery is if it were not where it's at. And you need a mindset. You need people who believe that they can. And I'm also convinced that the English language does a lot to help the ability for somebody to have this mindset. Just the way that you can come up with slogans. If you can conceive it, you can achieve it. It's so easy to express things in English, and it's simple to come up with these rah-rah encouraging statements that people can repeat to themselves almost like a mantra.
I like, for example, one of the fields of my research is proverbs, and I like the following ones. No pain, no gain.
That's
if
right.
at first you don't succeed, try and try again. Or never give up. So there are quite a lot of them. You have mentioned this mindset there. How could you help people to develop the so-called the growth mindset? Because what you have been talking about, this is the growth mindset.
Right.
For example, parents or teachers do not concentrate on something you do not do in a bad way, but they help you, a child or a student or a pupil, to develop, to become better. So your efforts or the way how you improve is graded, and this is the growth mindset. And I'm very lucky because my parents helped me and my brother, who is a professor in a university in Switzerland, so to develop this mindset, and not the fixed mindset. But what should people who are afraid of public speaking, who just say that it's not for us, so we are just shy. So how should they move? What can they do in order to overcome the fears?
One of the attributes of public speaking I find to be so beneficial is that it works everywhere else other than the stage. So you do not want to become a public speaker only because of the stage. Whether you're trying to talk to somebody who's a receptionist in a hotel or a police officer or trying to get your airline ticket changed, you have to be able to communicate clearly and with force to get the other side to react. Anybody who denies that you need that skill in everyday life has a serious problem. And what I find is that people who lack this skill, so just because somebody becomes a teacher or a pastor, doesn't mean that they speak well.
No.
And sometimes if you don't have something, it's very difficult for you to pass it on. So I ask my kids, which subjects do you not like in school? And without a question, it's usually the subjects where they don't like the teacher. And they have some reason why they don't like the teacher. It never has to do with hair color or the way their glasses look. It has more to do with the EQ than the IQ. Right? In the business world, we know that most people get hired for IQ and get fired for EQ. So in all the businesses I'm involved in, anytime we have a problem with an employee, very rarely is it because they're, and I'm going to purposely use a very strong word, so it's very rarely do we fire them or have to get rid of them because they're dumb. Yeah, they're not dumb. Most people are not dumb. They just don't know how to behave, either in a situation, their community, it's overused, but regardless of how overused it is, we don't make a lot of improvement in the area of communication. And you can't just become a better communicator without learning to control your emotions. One of the most incredible pieces of advice that I read from Warren Buffett. Mm-hmm. And he learned it from, and I don't remember who he learned it from, but it also turned out to be very important in his life. And the advice was very simple. You can always tell someone to go to hell tomorrow. So if you learn to control your emotions and not immediately react, you will probably solve 60 to 70% of the conflict in your life. You know, the worst thing you can do is send off an email when you're angry. And we're not there yet, but who knows, maybe one day when Grammarly and Gmail somehow have a stronger handshake, it will be able to notice the tone in your email and not send it. And then, because once again, if I'm upset with you, Anna, I can always share that with you tomorrow. I don't have to share it with you today. It's right. It's unbelievable what a good night's sleep does to a person's mood.
Yes, and there is a proverb: if you are angry, or when angry counts to 10. And from this point of view, maybe not even to 10, but to 100.
And if you learn that skill, and the nice thing about public speaking is public speaking gives you an environment, a reason for learning to control your emotions. Now, that works in the other direction. So most of us are fearful when we get up to speak on a stage. We need to learn how to control that fear. So we need to learn to control that emotion. And once we learn to control that emotion, then we can use that skill in other parts of life.
And how? How should we control this fear?
A couple of pieces of advice that I give to people is, number one, start to do something and feel the victory. So really small step, you know, not 5-minute speech and 25-minute speech, 30-second speech, and get around people who want to see you grow. I was listening to a presentation by Dr. John Maxwell out of the United States, and he has a rule that he says, avoid anybody who isn't thrilled. That's more than happy, thrilled when you improve. And so many of us are stuck with people around us that as soon as we start to improve a little bit, they pull us back. Yeah, but your sentence wasn't complete. You didn't take down the tone at the end. And so they start looking for these little mistakes, and it is so easy to steal somebody's momentum in the beginning. So they need to get around people who are willing to take the small steps with them. The other piece of advice is to not worry about the end. I don't like this saying because I think it's too cliche today, but you need to stay in the present. As soon as I start worrying about what the end of my speech is going to be like, will they clap, will I be embarrassed, I'm dealing with things in the future that I don't have control over. The only thing I have control over is the present. And the more I can involve myself in the present and concentrate on doing a good job in this moment is how I ultimately affect how I will. So I get rid of that source of fear. When I put together plans for my own life, I break down. So I want to achieve something 5 years from now. I break it down into daily steps. And one eye stays on the goal 5 years from now, but all I concentrate on is making sure that those things that I have to do today, I do today. And if I do that every day, then success in 5 years is almost guaranteed.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes.
Right. So I focus on the today because that's all I have control over. If I've got to walk 10,000 steps, I got to do that today. I can't not do it today and be successful 5 years from now. Just doesn't happen.
Okay, I see your recommendations. Yes, they're great. What do you think about the following statement, or it is a saying? Fake it until you make it. It's very popular in various workshops on public speaking. Can one fake the enough self-confidence?
I agree with that statement, and the reason I agree with it is you need to get started. And if you try to present something to the audience, you're also presenting that to yourself. So if you change the way you hold your body, if you pull your shoulders back and push your chest out, don't really care who you are, you will feel more proud. Now, you may not normally feel proud, but when you change the way you hold your body, you will feel proud. Same with fake it till you make it. If you change yourself and you start to demonstrate that you have that courage or that confidence, eventually you will figure out how to trigger that confidence when you need it. So basketball players, when they need that incredible source of confidence, when there's no more time left on the clock and the score is tied and it's a free throw and the 20,000 people are screaming, you need to have unbelievable concentration and unbelievable confidence that that ball will go where it needs to go. And when you need it the most, and I'm sure that's not the way they started, stick with it and it will change.
Yes, you have mentioned the word focus. Daniel Goleman, who has published the book on emotional intelligence, and he has also published the book on focus. And he says that actually our most success in life depends on our ability to focus. And what do you think about public speaking or good public speaking skills as the ability to focus?
I would find it difficult for somebody to give a brilliant speech without being able to focus on what is there. So the audience feels whether or not you're giving the speech for them or your mind is somewhere else. You can't fool them. And whether focus comes first and a great speech comes second, or you figure out how to do a great speech and then it changes how you normally focus. So psychologists will tell you that you either feel your way into a behavior or you behave your way into a feeling. Both ultimately work. We tend, in the public speaking, we tend to use the second one, that you behave your way into a feeling. You start to do it, you get feedback, you know what to change, you change it, you get complimented for it, you keep going forward, and you keep that cycle going. And ultimately, the way you change your behavior forces your feeling on the inside to change. Just like how you change the way you hold your body. If you change the way you hold your body, you will generate a feeling on the inside of being courageous or proud or brave. And it works.
Yes, actually, the same is true. Now, I frequently have workshops on the psychology of happiness and on the habits of happy people. And for example, I give my participants the following task, just like start smiling. And if you start smiling, you feel happier. If you feel happier, you smile more. Because a lot of people think that you can smile only if you are happy, but you can do it in vice versa. If you start smiling, you will feel happier. So not definitely that Yeah, and this is the same with public speaking.
I'm not even sure that either side has to be right. So some people say you're happy because you're successful, and the others say that you're successful because you're happy. If you became successful first and then ultimately became happy, I see there's a danger in it. But if it works and you continue to be successful, then I'm okay with that. The problem, if you need something on the outside to make you happy, is then your happiness is a reaction to, and you're like the Duracell bunny. If you have strong batteries, then you move around and you make the funny sounds. And if your batteries are weak, then you're not able to recharge them from the inside. You need somebody to show up and replace your batteries for you to be happy again. And the problem with that is what happens if that person doesn't show up, or what happens if that success doesn't show up.
I have recorded a number of interviews on success or happiness, because some people say that success and happiness do not go together. So it's a very interesting topic, which should come through.
I don't know if I agree with that. I look at somebody who's in this virus situation, who's given lots of interviews over the last 4 weeks, Bill Gates. And
yeah, I've watched his interviews.
Yeah, I just have to believe that there's a man who's successful and happy. I mean, he gets to live both dreams in one lifetime. He's made a lot of money, and he's giving away a lot of money to help people. So I think you can be successful and happy. Maybe not always at the same time, but they're not that far apart. He's just a well-grounded person who understands that part of what he needs to do with his resources is to help make this a better world. And he's doing that. I mean, what a great source of happiness to know that you have that ability.
Absolutely. Today I will have English classes. I have all my classes now in the platform called Zoom. And I have sent them the last interview Bill Gates gave as a TED talk to my students. So we are going to discuss this and many other interviews he has given lately. Now, you have just mentioned the time of this coronavirus pandemic. What about your Speak Academy? How does it function? Does it function nowadays?
I jokingly call any classes that we have face-to-face as bio classes, and then non-face-to-face classes are electronic or online classes. And even the courses that were bio classes that were in process have now been successfully transferred to the platform. And just today, a group of 35 students is starting an online course out of London. Wow. With myself and a former student of mine that will coach them and work them through. The virus is a great opportunity to improve a skill. What would really be sad is if we're in these quarantines for 4 weeks or 6 weeks and we don't come out more, better, bigger than we were when we went in. And the online environment is that platform, that marketplace today, where we don't have to let go of that desire to become better just because we're locked in our own homes. And sometimes I catch myself asking the question, is this really a pandemic? I mean, I understand a lot of people are suffering, but a lot of people are not suffering. And yet they're almost forcing themselves to suffer, right? This being locked away in your home may be one of the greatest opportunities in our adult lifetime to hit the reset button, catch up on a skill, and come out swinging harder in 2 months than we could have imagined. It'd be horrible to waste this crisis by not reading, not taking a class, not improving, and not like you, Anna, reaching out to someone you don't know.
Yes, yes. Yesterday I recorded 2 interviews with the person whom I didn't know, and then last week they. So for the last few weeks, you know, I have decided that nowadays I would like to record interviews with people maybe whom I don't even know, but I thought that they could show people that there are certain ways that you can become stronger, that you can overcome it. And this is why I'm doing these interviews. I know that you have a number of workshops on storytelling, and before meeting you today, I had watched a number of your videos on YouTube. Is there any good story, any humorous story about this situation with quarantine? How do they call this quarantine story?
I haven't looked for one yet. I'm sure there will be. But let me put it this way. I'm sure they're out there. I just haven't. Okay. I haven't looked for a good story. What I have been asked to do and have given videos and recorded talks about, you know, what am I doing with the time that I have available? And I believe in using part of the time that you have, regardless of whether in a quarantine or not, is to look at what am I going to do when life changes. So if tomorrow I could go back out on the street, what do I want to do? Do I want to be the same person doing the same exact thing that I did 3 weeks ago? Or do I have different priorities now? And how will I differently, you know, live? So I'm actively planning on that. What am I going to do then? I believe stories are everywhere. And they're just a matter of looking for, and they happen to everybody all the time, whether they go to the grocery store, whether they take their kids for swimming lessons, whether they listen to a political speech. Anytime something happens where feelings are involved, you have the basis for a good story. And what we're trying to do is convince each other through feelings. But if I'm trying to persuade you, I have to create some kind of an emotional connection to you for you to accept my ideas or my thoughts. And I can't, everywhere I go, even when in the morning I go for a long walk, I mean, I see things that make me happy, make me sad, and I could use any and all of those in a speech. So I could create a story out of the quarantine situation by using the quarantine as the frame, and then saying, what am I doing differently? What did it cause me to think of? And then I've got a quarantine situation. Then I add something about the dog not being able to come in and out of the house, and I can make that funny. And now I have a humorous quarantine story that I can take in whatever direction I want. I can go in the humor direction and talk about my dog as it's scratching the window and wanting in and not understanding why she can't walk in and out. Or I could talk about my kids, how they're learning. So the quarantine becomes the platform. And then the things that happen on top of this platform become the inputs for my story.
Yes. I deal with humor, and nowadays there is a group of people, of scholars, humor researchers in Amsterdam who have started collecting various humorous stories and jokes about quarantine and about this coronavirus. There are quite a lot of them. Before we finish this interview, what would you like to tell to those people who are going to watch us?
Ultimately, you are responsible for what you take away from this virus or any situation in life. And it's easy to get discouraged. And if you get discouraged, that's okay. Just don't stay discouraged. Find out how you can, in this virus situation, take control of your emotions. The easiest way to do that is to move, physically move. So motion is emotion. Unless you're under such a lockdown where you have soldiers that are standing in front of your door and you can't go outside, figure out whether it's a walk, whether it's riding a bike, whether it's running, do something where you control your emotions. Because once you have that headed in the right direction, it's much easier when I'm in a good mood to take a book off the shelf and start to read it and be able to remember some of it. If I have the right emotion, then I can hope, I can dream, I can imagine that we'll get through this. But if you wake up with a horrible feeling of fear and you don't actively do something to change that, most people, I'm this way. So I can be fearful, and it's normally when it's quiet, it's dark, I woke up, and then I start to think of all the negative things. And for me, what I found in my life, the easiest way for me to influence my day is to put exercise at the beginning of the day. So not drinking a cup of coffee or having an energy drink. It's using exercise to do my mood control. And then once I come back, and I don't have to do a marketing campaign to convince myself why I would have walked or ran, but I tick it off. And I tick it off every day. If you can control your emotions, then you can control the inputs. And you'll come out a better, stronger person 2 months or 1 month from now. But who you come out of this quarantine as, what kind of a person you come out as, is your responsibility. Can't pass it off to the government, can't pass it off to the virus. It's your responsibility. And trying to pass that off to somebody else isn't going to work. So take responsibility for where you're at and where you're going.